Greetings, my excellent friend.
Welcome to Heavy Metal
History.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of the Heavy Metal History Podcast. Joining me, as always, is my partner, Matt.
Yeah, g'day.
And we have a very special guest. His name is Brendan. He is also from Australia. He is the one-man band, I guess we could call Convulsing. Welcome, Brendan.
I'm glad to be here. And I guess you could call it a one-man band. Yeah, there is only me, after all.
So, there's two of you guys on here now. So you're from Sydney, Matt, and you're from Perth, correct? Brendan?
Me? No, I'm also Sydney. I'm Western Sydney. I'm about 40. I can see how you got confused. The suburb is Penrith, specifically.
Oh, dude, I'm from fucking Penrith too.
Oh, all right. Well, I'm probably like 5 kilometres from you, if that.
Oh, I moved into the CBD, but I was born, raised, grew up here all around Penrith.
Oh, all right. Well, there you go. So, yeah, I'm about 40 k's west kilometres for those using freedom units.
Yes.
For 40 kilometres west of the Sydney CBD, which I suppose as it goes west, it gets more and more...
It gets more and more suburban.
Real Australia, where, suburbia and the kind of classic, really hammed up, how you going, g'day mate type Australia is further west, and the more kind of bourgeoisie,
more urbanite, yeah.
Yeah, that's toward the CBD. Anyway, that's completely irrelevant, but there you go.
Hey, little geography never hurt anybody. So, the thing, man, we always like to kind of start off with what records or what was the very first one that, got you into metal, started you into the genre?
That's kind of a weird one. I guess technically it was stuff like Dio era's Sabbath and like Jethro Tull and kind of the classic metal stuff that my dad listened to when I was younger. Mm-hmm. But he would listen to it so much that I just couldn't stand it by the time I got to be 7 or 8. It was just couldn't handle it anymore. So it took me a long time to be able to listen to those records again. But I guess that's technically the first one. But the real beginning of metal for me, I suppose, was probably because I'm 27, so I was a 90s kid. By the time I got to have some influence over my own, what I was listening, it was like Soulfly and Sepultura and it was basically Max Cavalera initially. Nice. And kind of like Slipknot, Roadrunner Records, new metal bullshit, which a lot of it is still kind of nostalgic for me to listen to. Like I listened to Iowa the other day and it's still probably one of the heaviest openings of a record that you can get, despite the fact that it is not quite as impactful now. Like when you're listening to fucking Vermin Womb or something, where it's literally just like a shotgun blast to the face. It's still, when you're 12 or 13, that's like, holy fuck, what is this? This is the most noisome, chaotic thing I've ever heard. And at the time, I was in a concert band. I was playing brass, woodwind, and the flute, and like, imagine being a woodwind player at 13. Around the time of like American Pie in a concert band, male. But yeah, around that time I discovered metal and I was like, I can't do this on a fucking flute. What am I going to do? So I found a guitar and picked that up. I think it was my friend's guitar that I borrowed from him. And the rest is history. I did it kind of simultaneously for a while, but after a while I just threw everything else away and started playing guitar constantly.
Yeah, I think.
And I was never heard from again.
I think that's a smart move. I mean, guitar sounds cooler than a flute. It's definitely more, I don't know.
In most cases, yes, it does.
I say more badass.
But if I'd stayed with the sax or something, because I did that as well, maybe I would have ended up possibly something like what Val and the other guys are doing in Evangelist, or like there's an Australian band called Idols. I'm sure you've probably heard them. They just put out an incredible record probably about, 2 weeks ago or something is when it dropped. Mm-hmm. It's like Naked City via Throat Ruiner Records. It was like full of wailing sax, kind of like the John Zorn stuff that ended up on that Napalm Death record from a few years ago. Maybe I would have ended up there, but I didn't. I kind of want to go back to it now that I'm hearing all these bands who are like daring to try it again. But at the time, it was like, no, there's no place for me here.
Yeah, I definitely catch saxophone like every now and then in some records, and it surprisingly never feels out of place, especially when it's done correctly. I know Ishan uses it a lot in his records.
Yeah,
It sounds great.
Yeah, I think there's a band called...
What?
Saxophone there. It's called The Shining or The Shinning.
Oh, Shining, yeah.
Oh, I lost you for a second. Yeah, but Shining, the Norwegian Shining, yeah.
Yeah.
They're amazing. What's his name? Jorgen is on a bunch of those records. Like, I think he's on that Isan record, actually. I think it's either him or it's the fellow from Leprous. What's his name? I forgot his name completely.
Oh, fuck.
Yeah, I don't know.
But I don't know if he's a sax player or not. I feel like he might be. Anyway.
Yeah, I saw Shining randomly one time. I had no idea or like clue what they were, and then they go on stage and like bust out all these saxophones, and I was like, holy shit, like I'm into this. And like everybody in the crowd didn't really know them either, and like same thing, like everybody just kind of stopped what they were doing. You're like, this is fucking cool. Like we're all like, everybody was into it, and it was pretty neat to see.
That band's really cool in the way they've managed to differentiate themselves heavily, despite having the same name as the Swedish Shining.
Yeah,
they just got a lot of fans from that. Like they picked me up from that. I think I was like looking for the new Shining record that was about to drop. I was like 15 or something. I was like, oh fuck, got to get the leak. And I found Black Jazz instead and downloaded it. And I was like, what is this? And then I went and bought it, and I bought everything else since then, and I can't get enough. And I hope I get to see them at some stage, but probably not because no one ever comes here.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys got it pretty rough for shows, man. I feel bad.
Yeah. Well, we are getting Napalm Death's Brugeria and Lock Up. That's about to happen.
Yeah. What is it? 2 weeks?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. Did speaking of you said you were into like Max Cavalera and like Soulfly and all that. Did you go see the Sepultura thing at the Big Top about a month ago now? When they played, it was like Max and Eagle. They played like Roots from start to finish.
I forget what I was doing, but I had a few of my friends who went, and I did not. I was probably, I don't know. I was probably at home writing or something that I felt like was a better use of my time, even though I love that kind of era.
Yeah.
No, I probably should have gone now that I think about it, just because I'm so attached to that stuff.
Yeah, I had a thing. I had like a prior engagement on, but like I know a lot of people that went. They were like, that was just going back to 1995.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they still play those songs. Even though like they have the other Sepultura that, also plays those songs. Man, I never forgot the first time I saw that Max only played 4 strings on a guitar, and I was like, I want to do that too. And so like I tried for the longest time to just keep 4 strings, and all my other guitar player friends were like, what are you doing? That's stupid. I was like, it's this guy, he does it, and like I only like the first 4 strings, so yeah,
you only need those ones to make a power chord, man. It's fine.
yeah, exactly. I don't solo, so it's just like, fuck.
The same thing. I did exactly the same thing, but I did it on like a shitty blue nylon classical guitar. It was like an Ashton, which is like an Australian.
Yeah, like the ones that they like give out in schools.
Yeah. It was like a blue to black sunburst with 4 strings on it. It was the most metal thing alive. Playing like Refuse Resist on that. Fuck yeah.
I have to say, you mentioned getting into that Iowa record. That was, for me, like one of the first kind of few records that I got to after, like, Hatebreed was kind of the band that started it all, but I think not even a year later, maybe 2, Iowa came out, and, it's kind of like you were saying, at that time, that was probably one of the heaviest records to come out, and maybe nowadays, like, it gets a little, like, not, I don't know what the word, like, it doesn't get the credit it deserves, I think, anymore, but, man, it's if you listen to some of those songs, it's still got, like, all that raw, like, I think that was Slipknot at their best. It just got the raw energy.
Yeah, listening to that record with the ears of 2001 as opposed to like, the years of the current year.
Yeah.
It's just like I still sometimes go back to when I was like 11 years old and listen to it.
It's just like that. If nothing else, for anyone who hasn't been bothered to hear it, or maybe they just kind of were aged out of it at the time, because I mean, admittedly, Pestilence records were heavier in like the late 80s. So, I'm not going to be upset if you haven't heard it, but they're like the first 20 to 30 seconds of the opening track where they're fucking like Joey, sorry.
Yeah.
Is just blasting the shit out of his drums, and all the guitars are in, and there's like 5 tracks of drums, like auxiliary drums, and there's like 30 vocal layers, and everything's just like that's
it is that wall of sound that they started coming out with, and then the later records they really kind of got away from that, so you could hear let's hear all the instrument breathe, and it just isn't as heavy, it's just lost, just like it's what made it unique.
Yeah, but that's like the pinnacle thing, where it was like if you hadn't been exposed to anything like that and you were 12 and you heard that, and it was just like it's like, oh my god, and the rest is history. And 3 years later I was listening to Severe Torture and fucking like Bird Flesh on the bus home, and walking home listening to Winds of Creation and like trying to learn it, and then
it is
just
pretty
kind of snowballed down from that.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it is pretty hilarious how like it almost like escalates to a point of like extremity after you kind of like get your starter bands, and then you go and you find like the craziest, heaviest, loudest, fastest thing you can, and it's like, oh, how did I end up listening to Mortician going from like Hatebreed and all that stuff? It just happens, and then you're like never the same again.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like that's something that's really kind of unique with the genre of metal. Definitely. Like even the stuff that's considered like it's like the pop or fake or pose or whatever, like it's still pretty hard, but then you really go down this rabbit hole really quickly.
Yeah,
and it depends on too, I think a lot of people not a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, but there is like that little bit of air of elitism that kind of happens with some people in metal, and like they only want to listen to like the most underground or most old school band ever and like listen to nothing else. And it's the weirdest thing to me, because there's so much different like genres and kinds of bands out there that, like, why wouldn't you want to hear it all? It seems like you're kind of depriving yourself.
Yeah, that's probably my favorite thing about having grown up around the age of kind of file sharing and so forth. It's like at its peak between 2002 and like 2009 or something is probably when it started to fall off.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's a good thing, because now we've got Bandcamp and blah, blah, blah. Bread and butter for a lot of people. But
give me money.
Yeah. Or don't ever give me money in my case. Just download the thing if you want, whatever. But because of that, I was kind of pulled in all the directions at once. So at the same time, I was listening to Mortician and getting my first taste of Cannibal Corpse. And like I said, Severe Torture is probably they're like, probably no one really knows who they are now, but they were a really important kind of like, I think they might have been Belgian, either Belgian or Swedish or something like that. They're like a kind of a straightforward, modern, semi-technical death metal band. They're like high tempos, really riffy, kind of Decapitated inspired stuff, but not so heavy on the solos. And it was kind of a unique leader sort of band, like a middle of the road tech brutal death thing. Anyway, so at the same time I was listening to that, I was also listening to like Pain of Salvation and Spiral Architect, who are like an offshoot of Emperor, and a bunch of members from Emperor doing like a progressive power metal thing. And I was listening to like Born on the Club of Gore, and I was listening to Yaga Yazis, or like a jazz trip hop thing. And I was listening to like Tony Williams' Lifetime and Alan Holdsworth, and like diving off into guitar. So it was like all of this stuff is coming at the same time. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am now, where I'm just a music-obsessed idiot. And like at the extremes of all the genres at once. So it doesn't always come through in the music that I write, but sometimes it does. And you can hear like little bits and pieces where I've directly stolen from, like a Can record or something. one of the first things that happened after I put my record out actually was Jeff Whitehead, like Rest Leviathan fame, sent me an email and was like, "You a fan of Can by any chance?" And I went, yeah, man. This is after a couple other emails of like, "Hey, send me a tape," and various things. But he was like, "You a fan of Can?" I was like, yeah, actually. What made you say that? He goes, "Oh, because there's this part in one of your songs that really reminds you of it." And he pinpointed it to like the second of me ripping them off.
Wow.
So I emailed him back. I was like, "Yeah, I kind of stole that a little bit." And he was like, "Oh, I didn't realize you stole it, but yeah." So it's like that little thing, you know, it kind of infects you. So that whole period of time, like 5 years, where I was getting assaulted by brutal metal and the falsest of things in the world, informed me hugely. And I hope there's another period like that for people, or even now. I mean, you can just jump on Bandcamp and go Discover and off you go. But that kind of period of time was really critical for me.
I think
and I haven't really met many people who took as much advantage of it as I have, unfortunately. Like, I know I've made a few friends who are like, "Yeah, I'm equally into ridiculous, like Bulgarian pop music as I am, you know, gore grind," but not many.
Yeah, I know Matt is. He's a big Taylor Swift fan, and he'll.
Oh, look, I will defend that at any order, but I cannot defend what is coming out now from her.
I hear you on that. I have a friend of mine who programs for FBI. Actually, shout out to John. He also drew the logo for my little project thing. He and I are like the biggest advocates in New South Wales for Carly Rae Jepsen. Her second record is like immaculate pop music. It's like it's perfected.
It's really just came out of nowhere, and it's really just like been overlooked.
Yeah, and it's not like saccharine shit pop where you're clearly listening to it and there was no effort put into the songwriting or like the melodic structure of it or the chord progression or the tempo, or like there was no thought to it. It was just like chart music. This is like somebody sat down and composed songs and then made them as unbelievably catchy and like they get inside you as much as possible. So they put so much effort into that, and that's
I really do feel like that there's an art form, and it's something that you need to kind of have in order to write good pop music. And I feel like the bad pop music is just indie music.
Yeah. So I think metal to make just like a broad statement, I think metal as a genre could benefit hugely if people take a more critical ear to just music craft and song craft in general. Because, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily sit down recreationally and listen to a Taylor Swift record per se, but if it's on, when I'm listening to it, the way I choose to listen to it is like with a critical ear and like, what makes this song work? Why is the vocal going up here? How is this mixed? And when you do that, you get more out of it than just...
Oh, this is just a banger on the radio. Yeah, no, it's...
Yeah. And then you can make better metal. So you make this really like engaging compositions that go somewhere and have like an internal structure that guides you to the end. And you can write a 15-minute song with one riff and kind of push it in such a way that it doesn't get stale. That's what I like.
Yeah, that's one thing, like, you can tell when bands take like a little more time to craft a record as opposed to just writing a record, you know, because I feel like there's a huge difference between the two. And a lot of times people, we've talked about this a couple times, like they'll just want to be on an album cycle, so they'll just like write shit just to get it out. But then, bands that take their time, like take 3-4 years in between writing a record, it's because they're actually trying to work on something and make it sound good as opposed to just rushing something out there.
Yeah.
I mean,
that's why we end up with things like the Blood Incantation record, which was like hyped to shit and took forever to make and was completely justified.
Yeah.
There's not a moment wasted on that record, and it's short too. It's like 37-38 minutes or something.
Yeah, it's pretty short.
For a record now, that's pretty short. You're looking like 45-50 minutes on average for like
to that kind of music.
Yeah. I mean, it's less common on Dark Descent or something like that. That's kind of 37 to 40 is the average. But I mean, for a technical kind of spacey atmospheric thing, a lot more time tends to be wasted on atmospheres that don't really go anywhere, but or they just hang around a little bit too long, or the idea dwell a little bit too long. But Blood Incantation, everything is like distilled down to the absolute 100% proof, like rocket fuel of that kind of music. And so when you listen to it, it just carries you away wherever you're going, and then the record's over, and you're like, "Fuck!" And then you're like, "I want more of that." So you put the EP on instead.
Yeah. Did you end up seeing them like a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah. It was serious, like put all my guitars in the bin and set them on fire type of gig for me.
Yeah, because I was at that gig as well. And even like when you say you listen to that record and you kind of just want more of it, even though like it's like a fairly long album, but like it's just the right moment. Even when seeing them, like it still had that same kind of feeling where you were watching it. Yeah, it was only like a 30-minute set, but you kind of just wanted more, and nothing really hung around longer than it should.
Yeah, it was really perfection. Like, I don't think I've been to a show in a very long time where I've enjoyed it more than that. And it was like, I almost couldn't watch. I like Arcturus a little bit, but I almost couldn't watch them after that. I was like, what? This was like two different gigs happening simultaneously.
Yeah. I felt it. Yeah, it was pretty much like night and day.
While we're on that subject, Golgothan Remains are fucking sick. And if you haven't actually listened to them, local and international listeners, go check them out right now. It's like Australia's best incantation core, if we want to use that shitty buzzword, but they're so much more than that. They are definitely.
Were they the first band or the second one?
They were the first band, yeah.
Oh, they were quite good. I stuck around to listen to them before my mate showed up.
Yeah, they were fucking mad. They were really, really good.
They were really good, yeah.
Germ was the second band, and while I like what Tim does, Tim Yatras is the vocalist, and he all the other guys are kind of hired guns from other bands. I think like Gods of Eden and a few other bands. While I like what he does, it did not work in that room and with that crowd. He's also done some amazing things with Austere and like Grey Waters. He's kind of DSBM Australia atmospheric black metal royalty. Like he's done a lot of shit. But you have to catch him at the right moment, and it has to be the right atmosphere and the right mood. And I don't feel like he was on the right bill, and he didn't seem like he was having much of a good time about it.
I felt like the room was too big with too little people for it to.
Yeah, like I've seen them 2 or 3 times, and they've been fantastic. Like they played at the Oxford Arts and a few other things as well.
Oh yeah, that would have been the perfect place to see them.
But yeah, Golgotha Remains, sick. Go check them out.
Yeah, we'll link that stuff up so people can find it. I think you guys are talking about that Blood Incantation record. I remember listening to it like so much when it first came out, and then I just like stopped listening to it for whatever reason. And then I think 2 or 3 months ago they were in my area and they were playing a show, and I was so down to go see it, and then I just didn't go. I changed my mind last minute. I fucking should have went.
Yeah. Well, fortunately for you, there'll be another opportunity.
True.
For us, I'll probably never see them again unless I make a holiday or they somehow come back on another bill.
Yeah, it's this guy over here with his $12, gigs that he can just rock up to.
Yeah, fuck.
Yeah, that's true. Next week I'm going to see Thou and City of Caterpillar for like $10, I think. It's not. Yeah.
You just want to bang your head against the wall.
Yeah, and then like a week after that, Wolves, they're playing down here, and I think it's like the same thing, Wolves in the Throne Room.
Yeah, will Thou be supporting them at that point? Because they're supporting them right now, aren't they?
I don't think so. I think the tours are like splitting up.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and then Wolves is going off to like do dates with somebody else, and then Thou is going to do dates with somebody else, as far as I remember.
All right. Yeah, there's been a lot of like insane packages like that I would have loved to see. Like there was a fucking Piron, who are my at this point top 3 extreme music bands of all time. Piron are amazing. I cannot say enough good things. That record, that they just put out. What is it? What Passes for Survival is probably going to take the best record album of the year for me. But they're on a bill with like Artificial Brain.
Oh yeah.
And fucking, it makes me so mad.
Yeah,
to see those tour flyers and things. So they're just like, we're doing 45 dates at like $5 a show with Artificial Brain. See you on the road. And then like Cult Leader as well. It's like, fuck me, man. I get so angry about it. I have to turn my laptop off.
Yeah, I guess I didn't really think about how much I take that stuff for granted. I get bummed out if like somebody doesn't even come on the West Coast, not realizing that, you know, within 2-3 months they'll be back on the West Coast anyways.
Yeah.
You guys, like you're lucky if you get somebody there every once or 2 or 3 years.
This last like 12 to 18 months has been pretty incredible though. Like we had that the tour that's just about to happen with Napalm Death, Brugeria, Lockup is pretty big. Then the one we just had with Arcturus, Blood Incantation, was a weird match but also pretty big. So it was like one crowd came in for Blood Incantation and then left, and then another crowd came in for Arcturus.
Yeah, that was me.
Yeah. They did that twice because Golgotha played first, then Germ, and then so it was like in out. Anyway, so we got that, and then earlier this year, was it this year? Sure, it was this year because I went to it was because I went to Europe like straight after with my band. We had Marduk, Gorguts, Mugwa, Ulcerate, and Departe all on the one gig, which is like, what the fuck was that? So it was like Ulcerate and Gorguts on the same night.
I heard about that. That one would have been nuts.
That was so good. I'm not the world's biggest like Marduk fan, but that whole lineup was just shredder drummers the whole night. Not a moment of boredom awaited you at that show, and it was packed out. So shouts to Dave Haley of Psychroptic for booking that tour, and he's pretty much killing all of his bills at this point. Everything direct touring announces is like world-ending bills from all over the world because he's kind of built up that contact network of being in Psychroptic for so long that he can just email guys and say, hey, you want to play a show? And then they'll come.
Which is nice to have that because, I mean, if you have somebody that is there and able to get people shows, it's probably extremely helpful.
Yeah. Like he did all of like, each time Absu have come out here in the last like 5 years, I think it's only been like 2 or 3 times. Mm-hmm. They've shared the stage with Portal, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
And Ruins and a bunch of other like local bands. So it's like he has the pull to put together these huge bills. But we only get them like once every 8 months or so. And all the local stuff, it's getting harder and harder to put on a local show as well. Yeah. Because 2 or 3 venues left out of what was half a dozen or so in which to do it. And everyone competes over the same weekends because that's just how it is, unfortunately.
It's a shame, man. Even here, like where I'm at, there's not really a big scene, like maybe once every 2 or 3 months. Like the shows coming up is probably the first shows in about 6 months that have been like pretty decent, and it's I have to go all the way up to Seattle, which is like 2 hours away, just to see a pretty good show. But here where I'm at, it's like nah.
I would definitely do that. Like for me, being 45K.
Yeah, going 2 hours away is like
it's about an hour away, regardless. Okay. So when I went to see Blood Incantation, I drove for 45 minutes to an hour to get there.
Yeah, that's not bad.
That's just like standard. That's like going to work. Like, yeah, sure. 2 hours away would be like Newcastle or something, and Newcastle is a pretty sick local scene. Not really for metal per se, but lots of like punk and hardcore. And Wollongong as well. It's like another little tangential north of Sydney.
About an hour south of Sydney, but like that really does have like a pretty good like kind of hardcore scene as well.
Yeah, there's like kind of regional centres in inverted commas, even though they're not that regional. When we're talking regional, we're talking like cattle stations in the middle of fucking nowhere. But Wollongong and Newcastle, respectively, are like hubs outside of Sydney.
they even call fucking Penrith a regional centre.
Oh man, it's not that bad, but yeah, it can be pretty bad. It's gentrifying heaps though. Pretty much.
Yeah,
all.
I know it's getting nuts. Yeah, I left about 2-3 years ago, and like I come back like every now and then. It's like, what is going on?
Yeah, mini Sydney's everywhere.
Yeah, it's nuts. Mate, so Convulsing. So how long ago did you kind of like start the project? And
Literally,
what was it kind of like spawned out of?
Literally March, probably April, March was when I started to like in 2016 is when I started to take it seriously, I suppose. I've been trying to write like an album's worth of kind of death metal, I suppose, that I enjoyed from start to finish, or that I thought was consistent, or that was worth anyone hearing for ages, for like 15 years. Since I basically started playing guitar, I've been trying to write an album and put it out. But I just never did it. And somewhere around October 2015, I kind of got back into the swing of it. I'd been in Dumbsaint for 2 or 3 years. That's my main gig in inverted commas. I've been in that band for 2 or 3 years, probably closer to 4 years at this point. We're like an instrumental kind of post-rock, post-metal band in the same vein as like Isis and Rosetta and so forth. So I've been doing that for a while, and I thought, all right, I can probably do a bit more metal at this point and actually focus on it a little bit. And around that same time, my grandmother died, and she was like the one who primarily pushed me into music kind of accidentally. Like a lot of my early memories of music are from her. Like she would clean the bathroom listening to Santana or like Tony Williams' Lifetime, or I'd be down in her office like hitting an old shit like Technics, because organ, like a player piano type thing with 2 keyboards and like rhythmic, like bossa nova rhythmic accompaniment built into it and shit like that. They're really popular in the 70s, and heaps of housewives in the 70s bought them thinking, oh cool, I can play like When the Saints Go Marching In and entertain. So a bunch of like 60s 70s households ended up with these organs, and my nan had one, so I bashed around on that. So I kind of got the taste for music, and I would listen to her play all the time. And so in October in 2015 she died, and it was like a rude awakening, I suppose, of the slow kind of the sands in the hourglass draining out. And even though I'm quite young, it was like it reminded me that time is short. You shouldn't waste your opportunities, to do things. So at that point I kind of resolved to do something in her honor, I guess, a little bit. So I dedicated the album to her in the end. But it was probably about March, after that following March, is when I really started to focus on it. I had like 2 songs done, and they were fairly consistent, which is a revelation in my songwriting history. Like, these 2 sound like they could be on an EP. I suppose I'll keep going. And then I did. And by like October that year, I had 8 or 9 tracks. I think I had 10, so I threw 2 of them away. Damn. And I just kind of put it out unceremoniously. I just worked on it when I got home from work, and then dropped it in November sometime. And I was just like, hey, remember, some of you I told I was doing a thing. Here it is. See ya. And everything since then has just been word of mouth and people appreciating it for some reason. But I didn't put any effort into any of the promo, or I didn't really hype it up or tell anyone about it beyond like 4 or 5 people that were in my immediate vicinity. And I just kind of let it go like a balloon.
That's pretty good. It's gained some traction then. I think I probably found it a little bit after November, December of last year, because it got put on a YouTube page that I follow. Pavel
who runs that. You're talking about Odium Nostrum, right?
Yeah, that's the one.
Pavel sent me a message within hours. I don't know, he's got like, he must have spies at Bandcamp or something, or just sits on the Bandcamp metal new releases list, just like refreshing for hours a day to try and catch the things that come through. But he was within like 2 or 3 hours, he sent me an email going, hey, can I put it up on my channel? And I went, yeah, fuck, whatever. Do whatever you want. It's free. I don't care. And 150,000 views later, it's like one of the most watched videos on his channel. it's got more views than like Death Spell Omega EPs and shit on there. I was like, what? No, that's wrong. That shouldn't be. And so he's like largely responsible. Probably 70% of the success of it, I'd say, has come, at least the early part of it had come from him, because he already had that subscriber base. But of course, I've got friends in bands and things like that, and they're all like really supportive of me for some reason. And yeah, it just kind of just grew all on its own. I wasn't really expecting much. I was just trying to wear my musical heritage on my sleeve a little bit, and make something that I thought sounded like a good representation of what I like in extreme music. And I guess that's what it ended up being. It's like a little bit ulcerate-y, it's a little bit primitive man-y, it's a little bit shining-y, it's a little bit, Pain of Salvation-y in some senses. There's like kind of in the chord movement in some parts is a little bit proggier than others. Yeah, so I just kind of threw it all in together and tried to write stuff that didn't feel weak, I guess, by comparison to the rest of it. So there's 2 or 3 tracks that I didn't use because the mood felt kind of wrong. They were a little bit more, I guess, not happy, but they weren't as kind of sinister sounding or, as morose sounding as the rest of them. So they stuck out heaps, even though that still technically they sound the same and they're from the same period of songwriting. I just couldn't use them. I don't know if I ever will, but they're still sitting there.
I will say the album itself does have like a overall mood to it, that it's just all encompassing, which is nice, and that's probably kind of what got me sucked into it. And it's funny, like I know this all happened kind of quick, but how this all came about is like somebody posted the video on Reddit, and I was like, oh yeah, this is cool, and I just kind of left a random comment, and didn't expect you to reply, the guy who made it, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and now here we are sitting here talking about it, so it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I find pretty much everything that's happened in the last 18 months has been like that. And finding that Reddit post was only because I got, after 4 or 5 weeks of absolute silence, probably about 6 or 7 people all bought the record at once on Bandcamp. What the fuck's going on here? So I went into the stats and looked at the referrals, and one of them was a Reddit post. But, oh, okay. And then looked up the Reddit post, and I just like to, engage somehow with the people who pay money for this mess of a fucking thing. Like, thanks, I really appreciate it. Here's a bunch of other albums that informed this that are probably better. I'm a little bit self-deprecating about it, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
But I can acknowledge that it's good, otherwise I wouldn't have released it. And I'm flattered that so many people like it. But obviously, you can never be as proud of your own stuff as the things that influence you. You know what I mean?
I think
so speaking of...
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, so speaking of influences, saw there was a Porcupine Tree cover on this album, and you're talking about earlier, it just fits with the mood. Was it just a conscious decision that just went with what you were writing, or was it just something that you've always wanted to do, or? I
just love Porcupine Tree. I absolutely love them. I particularly love that period of like 1993 to 1997. So like Yellow Hedgerow Dreamscape onward.
Yeah.
So it's like kind of psychedelic, pre-internet, pre-Fear of a Blank Planet, Xbox is a god to me, Porcupine Tree. Like for those who didn't get that, that's a lyric from a song on Fear of a Blank Planet. It's like the opening track. The Xbox is a god to me. Man, come on, dude.
Yeah, it's a good one.
But that whole period is huge musically for me, particularly in the atmospheres and the way the songs are kind of built up. They're definitely kind of noodly wah-wah pedal prog in some senses and very psychedelic pseudo-LSD in other ways. But I just love that song and I love that whole period. And it was an accident. I was just messing around playing the chords before I wrote the last track, or like while trying to write the ending of the last track on the album. And I accidentally recorded the cover like in 3 hours or something. And I just made some shit drums for it. Like I didn't put as much effort into them as any of the other songs. You could probably tell that. and recorded it. And then I asked a few of my friends, like, if you had a cover on a record, where would you put it? Would you put it right at the end as like a bonus track or what? Because I've never thought about that, like in terms of disrupting the flow, because technically I didn't write that.
Yeah.
So how could it possibly belong on the record? And then a couple of people said, yeah, put it at the end. But I had one friend who said, no, put it like at the second last track, so that way you've got something to say of your own at the end, and it will kind of wrap it all up. And then I remembered the Slough-Feg record that does the same thing. It's like 2 tracks before the end, there's a Manila Road cover. And it doesn't feel like it's out of place at all. In fact, it feels like they wrote that song, and I thought they did. It's called Derek Doom. Mm-hmm. It's on Hardworlder, I think. It's like the 3rd track from the end. And it might as well be a Slough-Feg song. It's amazing. But it's a Manila Road cover. And so the ordering is very important for things like that. But no, it was a complete accident. I just chucked it in, and it just happened to feel right as like a mournful congregation doom track.
Yeah.
You know, we were talking about... Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, well, I hope he doesn't hear it, because it's probably an offensive cover, honestly, to Stephen. If I think about how it would be appreciated,
I don't know. You kind of have to take like some appreciation.
Yeah, maybe.
I know we were talking about the Celtic Frost record, Into the Pandemonium, and that album starts off with a cover song, and it's probably one of the worst cover songs. So it's a good thing you didn't put it at the beginning of the record. Not that it's a bad cover, but that would have really like thrown everything off, because every time I hear that record, I'm just like, why would you start with this song? That is such a bad decision. It's weird.
Can't do that.
But another thing I was going to say too, man, I think a lot of the reason like why people possibly gravitate to this record is, you know, it takes a lot of talent, whether you want to admit it or not, to sit there and write and compose all these instruments and record them yourself, whether it be like programming drums or writing a guitar or lyrics or whatever. That's pretty fucking talented, man. Like, you got to give yourself that much. And I think, you know, when people hear that and know it's just one person that did all this, it's really fucking cool.
Well, yeah, thanks for that. Like, I do appreciate that sort of sentiment, and when people tell me that you've really done something here, like it's impossible not to.
Yeah.
It's like, if you put something out in the world, there's no matter how kind of self-effacing about it you are, there's a part of you that wants it to be heard and to have a positive reaction. But I mean, the negative reactions, which there have been very few, which shocks me, because most things in metal have a like equally positive and negative reaction, but my record apparently, even those, I get the same kind of level of enjoyment just to read the reaction of people who listen to it. So a lot of it is just like, there wasn't much going on. This is blatant death spell worship. It sounds best when he's not cloning ulcerate, blah blah blah, weak vocals, drums are typewriter, blah blah blah.
Obviously programmed trash. Yeah, like, come on.
I love reading that though, because it's a little bit of like confirmation of, yeah, it is garbage, and then I have to kind of do something more, and it doesn't upset me at all. But on the other hand, yeah, the fact that so many people have gotten so much out of it, I don't know what to say, honestly. It's been really cool. In fact, it's been probably one of the most entertaining things just to watch unfold for me that's ever happened to me.
I mean, yeah, you're pretty much almost a year removed at this point from it, you know? So it's got to be like pretty surreal.
Yeah. Well, I would have liked to have something out before now. In fact, the split that's about to come out in November, I finished that up before I went over to Europe with Dumbsaint to do like the European tour to finish our album run off. Mm-hmm. I wanted to kind of get it out in May, August, type of like middle of the year, somewhere between May and August, but it just didn't happen. It's been done, and I've been just kind of slowly tweaking the mix like since then, but it's mostly just like waiting for the right moment and for the Siberian Hell Sounds component of that to be done, and then we can get it out. So I think they're pretty excited about doing some more shit as well. It'll be their longest release, actually, supposedly. But yeah, I kind of wanted to keep the pace up, being a year out, and hopefully I will. I'm going to try and get a second LP out early next year sometime. So I've got about 35 minutes towards that. There's like one skeleton that I need to finish off, and I'll get it over 40. And then drop that at random at some point. Once it has art and has a decent mix, I'll just put it up like 2:45 p.m. on a Thursday or something with no thought.
Well, hey, if you ever need some art done, I'm a graphic designer. I'll do something fucking badass for you, man.
All right. I'm building up like a little catalog of all these creative people now. That's been probably the coolest thing, honestly, since putting this out, is meeting all of these like lunatics who are just like me, who are just like have an insatiable appetite for metal and for the obscure in like all various directions. So like Chris of Gravere, he's the drummer of a Brisbane black metal band called Gravere, is identical like to me in that sense, where he's like, he'll go digging constantly for new shit in any genre.
Yeah, I do that all the time too, man. I'm trying to find like any new thing that I can, whether it's like I sit and go through like a YouTube wormhole for like 4 hours, or just like troll through Bandcamp, or whatever I got to do to find something. It's just like every week I take like a day and just kind of like look for new stuff.
Yeah. So I hope that continues. The more I put stuff out, I suppose that's what I really want to get out of it. I just want to connect with all these people around the world who are doing similar things, like Gabrielle as well. The guy who there's a band called The Clearing Path. I think he's about to put out his second or third record on. Is it Eisenwald? It's on something. He's like he's me, but in Italy, making atmospheric kind of black metal.
Yeah, I was gonna say I've definitely heard them before.
Wunderkind, basically. He's fucked. He's younger than me, and he's like a film composer studying to do film audio as well, like classical film composition. Mm-hmm. And Markov, I think is his name, the guy who did Chornobog and like all those slow records, and he's got like a huge catalog of. He's like 23 or something ridiculous, and he's done like 8 hours of this unbelievable music in 5 different genres. And that Chornobog record is incredible. It's got
yeah, that was a fantastic record.
Esoteric, the vocalist from Esoteric, forgotten his fucking name, but he's on that. He does the vocals for that record.
Gosh, that's a band that I miss.
Yeah. And I met Robin, also sometimes known as Forge, who used to be the drummer in The Amenta, and has done drums.
Oh my god, The Amenta, jeez.
Yeah, he was the second drummer in The Amenta after Dave from Psychroptic left them. He's fucking incredible. And who else can I talk about? I'm meeting all these people is the best part. And what was the guy? Cracks, or fuck, what's his pseudonym? Krav, something like Kraz, some shit like that. From Paroxysm. They're a Canadian, like, mitochondrion, portally kind of cacophonous death metal thing. He's an incredible artist, insane metal maniac. I'm just all these kind of guys I'm connecting with, and finding that there's like a global network of solitary idiots all trying to make extreme music at the same time. Yeah, and it's not just the big guys like Scott and Jeff and Russell. So that's Zasta, Leviathan, and Striborg, respectively. It's not just like those 3 that are out there in the world. There's fucking hundreds of people all doing this insane stuff.
Yeah, I mean, and you're all kind of meeting each other. You're all kind of pushing each other forward to to perfect your art. And it's like I'd almost say it's like like your local scene back in like your 80s, something like that. But it's more of a worldwide. It's pretty much all online. It's all on the internet.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
so
if
I can just do that, that'll be awesome. I don't really care what shape the music takes. I just want to meet all these lunatics and listen to some good music, I guess.
I was gonna say, if anything, those 3 guys, like, from those bands. Like they're kind of like the progenitors of like the one-man groups, and then everybody just kind of took off with it. Because I remember like probably 2011 there was a Vice documentary that picked up on all those guys, and it was pretty
those
cool.
poor guys.
Yeah. I think I used
that
to.
documentary made them look like really psychotic.
It did.
Almost all of them painted them as like these complete psychopaths. Particularly Scott. I feel really bad for Scott.
Yeah,
He's a genuinely nice guy in the limited interactions that I've had with him. But that documentary didn't paint him in such a great light, and it also made Russell look completely like off the planet, crazy.
I don't know what he was on. Yeah.
He's also a genuinely nice guy, as far as I've been told. But that's what journalism does to you, I suppose. They caught all those guys in like a really interesting transitional period in their lives. Mm-hmm. Particularly Jeff, like that was around the same time as the whole legal trouble.
Yes.
So it wasn't such a great time to be doing that documentary, but that is what it is. It kind of brought them out of the shadows a lot, which I'm not sure that is good for anyone, particularly the kind of person making solitary, insular music like that. I definitely wouldn't enjoy it if it was me. But yeah, it's not just them. It's like hundreds of other little guys. There's an Australian. While I'm on the subject, I've been kind of scattershot this whole time.
Oh, it's all good, man. We love.
This is fantastic.
Yeah, we love nerding out about music, so it's all good.
That's how my head kind of goes. Even when people ask me direct questions, I'm just like off somewhere else. There's a local guy called Judd Madden, Judd with JUDDMADDEN, and he's been making one man kind of sludge metal, like Thou, Doomy, big fucking monolithic Titanic riffs, all on his own for pay what you want. He's got like 7 or 8 LPs at this point for a decade plus, and he's just got quietly off over there on his own. He's got like a little fan or following, myself included, but he's not really trying to be the next, one of the next big 3 solo artists. He's just killing it, and people who find him are blessed by having found him, and that's the way it goes. And there's so many more like that, which is like one guy off somewhere doing what he loves. And that's the cool thing. I don't think there's any other genre on the planet that has that. I definitely don't feel like there's, I guess there's maybe hip hop now and kind of electronic music, but that's all of it's happening in the last 5 to 10 years, where now there's a platform with like Bandcamp or something like that to get it out there. But I definitely feel like metal was long before that. With electronic music and hip hop, now that you've got the platform of Bandcamp to put it up there, you've got the platform and you can see what the rest of your scene is doing. But I feel like metal was so much earlier than that. This one guy with an 8-track sitting down and like, I'm going to make a grind record, or like, I'm going to make a black metal thing in a forest and put it out on a 10-copy release demo tape or something like that. Metal has always been doing that, whereas everybody else is just now catching up, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, metal was like the first ones to do the tape stuff, tape to tape and everything like that. You didn't see like pop music doing that, or
no, there's no like tape trading scene in pop music.
Yeah,
you couldn't like buy a zine from Spain and then read the back of it and then order like a sarcophago tape or something. It's like, what? Metal's always been doing that, whereas just now everyone's kind of catching up.
Yeah, and I think it's a double-edged sword with like the, pirating music. I feel like personally it's not as bad as it used to be. Like you don't have leaks dropping out like months ahead of time. It's usually like day of.
You still kind of do. Like the one that I know about definitely happened was the Amenra record that just came out. Well, it's not even out yet. It's out in like 2 weeks or something, and it leaked ages ago. Like,
yeah, I guess you're right.
At least 2 weeks ago. So it does still happen occasionally, but it's only a few. It's getting less and less of a big deal, and it's kind of forced a really annoying change in the way metal is released as well, where it's like you get these tracks that are dropped, like a 1-track thing 2 months ahead, or the day before release, there'll be a full album stream. Fucking why? Don't do that. Just drop it on the release date. You don't need to stream it the day before. And it's kind of, particularly for me, like I'm waiting for the new Primitive Man record. I haven't heard it yet. I know it's going to be fucking amazing because I love Ethan and I love everything he's done has turned to gold.
I've listened to it 3 times so far.
I haven't heard it yet, and I'm not going to listen to it until my fucking LP shows up because I pre-ordered that like almost instantly after it was made available, even though I don't have to do that. I don't like pre-ordering stuff necessarily, but with Relapse, if you want a nice looking LP, you kind of have to because they release like 100 copies of the Splatter Merge vinyl or something like that. So if you're a fan of the artistry of the packaging, you're forced to pre-order.
I mean, it's worth it too. Relapse puts out amazing looking stuff. Like I've never disappointed.
Yeah, they really do. Yeah,
it's artwork. I just treat it like I'm buying a canvas or something.
Yeah.
But I pre-ordered that, and I've been hanging out for it this whole time. And the release date was what, Friday? I don't have it.
Yeah. Friday.
But the entire fucking totality of the internet and all of metal journalism and everybody else on the planet has heard this record.
Yeah.
Whereas me, little old me, sitting here waiting for my LP so I can listen to it on a turntable in the dark with headphones, as intended. I can't, and probably hopefully it will arrive tomorrow because it's Monday and new start of a new business week. But I haven't heard it until then, so that's a really frustrating thing about piracy and leaks and things that's happened. But on the other hand, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you almost certainly if I hadn't stolen thousands, in inverted commas, of dollars of music between the ages of 12 and 16 because I couldn't fucking go out and buy. I couldn't even if I wanted to in Australia go out and buy unique leader records from anywhere because you just can't buy them.
Yeah, no one sold them.
You can order them. People don't sell them. You could order them, I suppose, but I didn't have a job. I certainly didn't have like international. It was still kind of mid-period internet. The e-commerce and PayPal and stuff was still kind of. It was scary for people to be using that stuff because there was no accountability necessarily, and like you had to use a credit card over the internet. What about data theft? Blah blah blah. So I couldn't convince anyone to do that. So how the fuck am I going to hear all this stuff in the prime time of my life where I've got 6 hours a night to listen to records, or like walking home from school or something at 3 p.m? I can spend the rest of my night listening to death metal. So if I didn't have file sharing and piracy and so forth, I would never have been exposed to any of that stuff because I'm the eldest child. I've got one younger sister, but I didn't have none of my friends. I didn't have any other way of hearing it. So on the one hand, you get that. So I think the benefit outweighs, in some sense, the costs of piracy in that the exposure is huge. Like it's a trite argument to make. Everybody makes it. It's like, well, people wouldn't hear it if it hadn't been pirated. But it really is true. Like I'm a prime example of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that makes perfect sense. I agree with you, like 100% on that whole sentiment. I know, because like the way you're explaining it is pretty much exactly how I was too. Like I didn't have the money to buy the records, even though like I did have, I was able to go to a store and it was somewhat available. But yeah, man, it's just I didn't have the money. I didn't have a job, and how else was I going to get a hold of this music if I didn't pirate it?
Yeah,
and the follow-on to that. Sorry to interrupt. The follow-on to that is now I've got more albums than cents. Like right behind me as I'm standing here, I've somewhere in the order of 1,500 CDs and jewel cases, and I've got like 250 to 300 LPs on a shelf to my left. So it's like all I've done since I got gainfully employed is buy fucking music and guitars and just shit to make music with. So it's as soon as I had, as soon as that moment hit, I already knew exactly what I needed. So I was just like, right, I'm going to buy all the Edge of Sanity shit that I want. I'm going to buy all the Bathory that I want. I'm going to get all the Emperor records. And I just did it all. So the argument that it's like, well, if you steal it once, you'll just have it forever, blah, blah, blah. I have the nostalgia and like the connection that I have with those records, even though I didn't own them. I was like, I couldn't go the rest of my life without owning them.
Yeah,
So down the line, I had to buy the fucking bootleg Edge of Sanity shirts from Mexico or whatever because Dan wasn't making any at that time. I just had to do it. I had to buy all the records from Black Mark. I had to order the complete Profound Law discography. Like, I think that's probably the first big purchase I made was when I got a job. Is I ordered like $600 worth of CDs from Profound Law. I just went back and just like add to cart. Just the whole back catalog, everything that they had, everything Chris had at the time, like in distro, everything, just all of it.
Gosh.
And the dollar against Canada was pretty good, so it was like 1-to-1 almost. And so I feel
exactly. May as well get it in now.
Yeah. So people do that. People will pirate shit, love it at a young age when they can't buy it, and then 10 years later buy 50 copies of it.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not 50. I've got like 4 different versions of Oceanic at this point, which I stole when I was 14. I probably own it in more different versions than any other album. And every time I see it, I just like, oh, this is a Japan press of Oceanic. I'll buy that.
Yeah, but it's interesting. I was just making an earlier point. It's like, yeah, we kind of grew up in a generation where you would go on your file sharing and you would do it. That's how you would obtain it. But now, with the prevalence of streaming services like your Spotify's, your Pandora's, your Bandcamps, I wonder if that experience is like being cheapened just because it's so easy now.
Yeah, that's a weird way.
Of going down the rabbit hole. Because I could remember, prime time of my life, like 15, 16 years old, I'd just be on when like MySpace Metal and then just going down the rabbit hole until like 2 a.m, just like downloading, listening to stuff.
Yeah, that's a really weird thought to have. It's like, do kids have it easy now because piracy is not as difficult or it's not as mandatory? That's a really weird way to like flip it on its head, where it's now come back to being a bad thing that you can't pirate as easily, or that you don't have to, or you don't have to dig. That's really cool.
And it's like two kids at school.
I hope they use Spotify and Bandcamp in the right way, where they're like, they will do that digging. I really hope so, but I don't know.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's like 2 kids at school. Hey, have you heard New Primitive Man? To a kid goes, no, and then they can pull it up in like 2 seconds.
Yeah. Whereas in the old day, you'd get out your Discman and then somebody would hand you a burned copy of it.
Oh my God, that was me.
An MP3 CD with like 99 tracks, and the first 10 are Carcass. It's not like the whole album, it's just like the first 10 tracks from Reek of Putrefaction or something. And then it flips immediately to System of a Down, and then like Cypress Hill, and then like Spider Shank, and then Fear Factory, and then Cannibal Corpse, and then because I had shitloads of music like that. I was listening to like 99 track MP3 CDs for a while on the bus.
Oh, you and me both, mate.
Gosh, and it's making me feel really nostalgic now thinking about all that stuff, because that's exactly what I used to do, is like burn CDs for my friends, or like have my friends burn them. If I couldn't find something, or if somebody had a better internet connection for me, I'd go over to their place and load up all the, like LimeWire, Kazaa, or whatever we had to just start downloading shit. And I'd be like, cool, man, I'm just going to download some stuff on your computer.
Yeah. So, I mean, it sounds really kind of silly to anyone not in the demo, I suppose, of like having that nostalgia, but it's the same as like tape trading, or it's the same as like dubbing tracks off the radio into a mix CD or something in some sense. It was like, this is the way you could get your hands on the music as quickly and as easily as possible, and then that's what you did. If you were so passionate about it that you had to have it somehow, that's how you got it.
Yeah, it was pretty rare that I mean, not rare, but few and far between that I would like pre-order a CD unless it was a band that I really, really loved, and like made sure that I wanted them to get my money, kind of deal.
I did it with Ghost Reveries, I think. It was Ghost Reveries. And I'll be honest and say that it was a disappointing pre-order. So as much as I do kind of like that album, and Opeth are very important to me as a band. But that, after the triumvirate of Blackwater Park and then the pair albums, the Deliverance and Damnation, for Ghost Reveries to happen, it just felt something about that whole record doesn't feel right. So it was kind of a disappointing start to my pre-ordering and my purchasing CDs. But, you know, I rarely did it as well. If it was like something of earth-shattering importance, I would absolutely do that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
I would convince them to somehow do it. But even then, it was really hard to do that.
Yeah, it kind of was.
Australia, anyway. Because
it has to get shipped over, and you're paying more for shipping than you are of the actual thing.
Yeah, that Ghost Reveries dual case CD probably cost me about $30 Australian. It's like, what the fuck? Why?
Damn.
Why? $27 CD plus GST or something. Fuck off, really. But that's how it goes. I'm paying $45 to $55 for a good 2LP vinyl at the moment, so I guess it makes sense. I just bought the complete Aranci Pazuzu discography on vinyl, essentially, because I think it's $20 Spin and Spot Records are doing like a reissue, or they have done a reissue of it.
Yeah, I saw
and
those.
by the time it gets to Australia, like Cosmonument, which is a fucking incredible gatefold 2LP with like the brightest art imaginable, is like $65 LP in Australian.
Yeah, I had a guy too. Like I sell some stuff on like Discogs, and the guy asked me to ship it to New Zealand, and the shipping was going to be more than the record. And I was like, dude, I don't want to charge you that much. He's like, yeah, it's fine. Let's just cancel it. Because I was just like, this is ridiculous. You're going to have to pay like $22 to get, a $20 record shipped.
Yeah. And it goes in reverse too. That's why when Breathe Plastic did the tape for Errata, I only got 25 off of him, and I restricted it to Australia only because I think I had one guy, I had a Canadian dude who did not want me to refund, absolutely not. He wanted the one from my hands. I was like, okay, fine, I'll send it to you. It cost me 25 Australian dollars to send him a $6 tape.
Wow.
It's like, dude, I don't want to charge you that. Come on. But he paid it. Some people are crazy, like me. I've done the reverse. I bought a Sentient Divide tape, and I bought a few other things recently that were like a $5 tape, and I paid $20 shipping just because I was like, I need to have this thing because it's cool. Like, it's a cool item, a cool physical representation, manifestation of this record.
Yeah.
So I try to do that as possible, but you have to suffer a bit if you want to be, that much of an idiot.
Well, man, I think that about wraps it up. I mean, I feel like we covered a lot of ground here and got to some damn good stuff. I want to nerd out more, but I got shit to do, and yeah. Yeah,
I could go for centuries, and I feel like I already have. Honestly, I don't know how consistent any of that was, but that's how I am, I guess.
It's been awesome. Like, seriously, we love nerding out about music, and like this was like exactly what we love doing, and that's why we do this podcast. So, I mean, we're totally down to have you on again any fucking time. Like, this is fun. We just do it for fun, So we appreciate you taking the time too to come on, man.
No problem. If I have anything interesting to say in the future at any point, definitely let me know and I'll come back.
Yeah.
But
well, before we go, just let everybody know where they can find your stuff.
Well, yeah, you can find me on Convulsing, convulsing.bandcamp.com. There's actually a link there to my my personal Facebook page, which, looking back, probably not the best idea. But I haven't had that many spam kind of
weirdos,
spam accounts and weird sex bots and shit contacting me. But if you want to get in touch with me, I'm pretty easy. I'm fairly public. I found out there's another band while doing this called Convulse that kind of confuses people sometimes. I don't think they're recording anymore, but anyway. But yeah, that's where you can find me. I also have an Instagram thing, which is mostly just pictures of ramen and pedals, which is BRNDANWS. I think that's linked from the Bandcamp as well.
Okay.
But that's pretty much it. I'm just a dude in Australia making music. Also, I'm in another band that I discussed very briefly Just because I probably should have spent more time on it, actually. I wouldn't say like we're a big deal, but I mean, it's a big deal for me musically. We're called Dumbsaint, and we're from the influence from the period of like 2003 kind of heyday post-rock, basically. So it's like Cult of Luna, Rosetta, Isis, even like alternate kind of prog bands like Ocean Size and, Explosions in the Sky, post-rock type of thing. We're that kind of cut from that cloth.
Hell yeah.
And our niche, I suppose, is we play to films. So the drummer and the bass player of the band are film students and really passionate about it. And they met in high school and met doing films that way. So we play with the films as like the front man or the front woman or the front person of the band. We play behind them. There's like no lights or anything necessarily. We're just kind of a silhouette, and we play the soundtrack to like a professionally shot and directed thriller, like a psychological horror film type of. That's the vibe that are in the film.
That sounds really cool.
So the record's called Panorama in 10 Pieces, and it's 56 minutes. I can't remember exactly how long it is. It's 56 minutes-ish of music and 56 minutes of film, and it's all linked. And it's shot as like it's synced beat to beat. So when we change chords, the shot changes, and it's like we play live that way, where we project it and we've got a click, so we're following the film. And we're about to start touring for that throughout November with Mono. You might have heard of those guys, the Japanese fucking post-rock titans that have released
15 definitely albums. Heard of them,
Yeah, 15 albums strong. Really looking forward to that. We're leaving in about 3 weeks to go and do a national tour with them.
Dude, that's
awesome.
So
you can find me a bunch of places. I'm fairly busy. Oh, I'm also doing like a live guitars thing in Grey Tomb. There's a black metal band from Melbourne. They're just about to put out an EP on Transcending Obscurity. So I'm everywhere. You can find me pretty easily if you want to.
Yeah, we'll definitely link to all that stuff on our website, so that way people can like go and find it and buy your shit and listen to your bands, because that's why we wanted you on here, so that way people can find out about you. Because dude, really, I think the album's great. It's one of my more regular rotations when I'm like in the especially where I live, it's rainy, so that kind of mood goes with it. So I listen to it quite a bit.
It was mostly written in the summer, actually, but I'm definitely I have an affinity for kind of winter and rainy kind of music.
Yeah.
For a mixed reference, I was listening to Brave Murder Day a lot to try and catch that vibe. That sounds like a rainstorm, that album. It's like you want to be inside in the corner, like freezing to death when you listen to it for the optimum enjoyment. But yeah, cool. That's really cool that you listen to it that often. I hope I can pull off something that connects with the new one. It's definitely going in a slightly different direction. It's, I guess, a little bit less washy. It's like a little bit more focused in spots. I'm trying a few different things in terms of tuning. There's a couple of songs that are tuned way, way lower.
Oh, hell yeah.
There's a few that are tuned up a little bit. And yeah, I'm going harder on the chord choices, and I'm trying to like spread out a little bit more harmonically. So we'll see if it matches. So far, I don't know if it's a very different sounding thing.
I'm pretty open-minded. I listen to a lot of music, so I don't really write things off the first time I listen to them. I gotta like really let it sink in. So I'm excited for whenever it comes out, man.
Yeah, man. Cool. Like as soon as you got Word West coming out, let us know. We'll love to have you back on. This has been a great chat.
All right. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course, man. I'll hit you up when we post it up, okay?
Absolutely. Looking forward to it.
All right, man. Have a good day.
You too, guys. See you later.
Right. Bye.
See you, man.
Be excellent to each other.
And party on, dudes!